Welcome to Modern Anarchy, the podcast featuring real conversations with conscious objectors to the status quo. I'm your host, Nicole.
I tried to keep her quiet, but she's screaming inside of me. I tried to keep her hiding, oh, shut up. I tried to keep her quiet, but she's a wild, wild woman.
Hello. On today's episode, we have writer and editor Dayna Troisi join us for a conversation all about celebrating ourselves unapologetically. Together, we talk about finding your rhythm with the universe, how the personal is universal, and the gift of community. Dayna has such a fun energy. Y'all are going to feel it. It is palpable. The way that she is authentic in her expression of self and creates a space with me in our conversation today. So thank you, Dayna, for coming on this show and being honest about what it was like to find community and what it is like to be navigating the difficulties of relationships. So just thank you. And with that, I will also be reading one of your Patreon letters today. This letter comes from Sam in West Virginia that says, "Hey, Nicole, I really appreciate you making this podcast, and I've learned so much about relationship styles. I'm new to non-monogamy and was curious if you have any advice on how to navigate the jealousy that comes up in threesomes. I would really like to see my girlfriend with other men, but I'm worried about what it's going to feel like afterwards. Please help." Thank you for this question, Sam. You are not alone in this. It can be really, really tricky to navigate the complex dynamics that go on in threesomes and any sort of dynamic that is outside of the traditional norms of monogamy. So I am so excited to answer this question and dive deeper into this with you on the Patreon. If you are interested in hearing more about my answer to Sam's question and also just feel like you want to deepen your sense of community, then definitely check out the Patreon link below. I've created a space where all of us conscious objectors can come to talk about these things, have discussion, and create community together. So if you feel called to deepen your sense of community or to support the podcast and keep it free for all listeners, then check out that Patreon link below where I hope to connect deeper with all of you. Now, let's tune in to today's episode. Cool. Well, hi. Welcome.
Thank you.
My name's Nicole. It's nice to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about the rescheduling. Thank you for being patient with me.
You're fine. All things work out at the right time. It all happens for the right time. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you. I'm still healing from my ankle. So
I know what happened.
I broke my ankle in 3 different places.
Oh, God. That sounds horrible.
Oh my God, it's so horrible, but I'm in a bedazzled wheelchair, so it's like not as horrible.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
So yeah, mobility has been like a little challenge, but that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that's probably really tough to just like do your day-to-day stuff.
Yeah. How was your day?
You know, it was really interesting. I have to say, it was a day that, I don't know, it was like a random experience of serendipity that has me feeling very spiritual in like an interesting way.
Great.
Yeah, it was really interesting. There was a person I had connected with on the podcast and I had wanted to meet, but they lived in a different state, and then they randomly moved back to the city, and I was just like out in my neighborhood reading and happened to run into this person, and just like we had been wanting to try and connect up and like hadn't like worked out, and then just to like find them there was just such an interesting experience that I'm still like processing. I think of like, wow.
Perfect.
Yeah, it was really wild, I have to say. So yeah, it's been an interesting day. Yeah. So in terms of like recording for the podcast, I tend to just let it flow naturally, any sort of conversation that we go to. But I also like to start a little bit and ask if you have any questions about the show, about me, about the process, anything that's coming up for you.
No, I'm ready to dive in, I guess.
Hell yeah. Well then, so who are you? How would you describe yourself?
My name is Dayna Troisi. I'm a bionic bitch. I'm a writer.
Fuck yeah, I'm excited. Two words in, I'm good.
I'm the managing editor of Go Magazine, which is the nation's preeminent, most widely read lesbian magazine.
Fuck yeah.
I'm the co-host of Girls Interrupted podcast with my creative partner in crime, Zara Barry. And that's who I am.
Yeah, yeah. And then who are you really?
Who am I really?
Mm-hmm.
I really am just me. Like I'm just like a
Mm.
loud mouthed, unapologetic
Fuck yeah.
um writer, podcaster, and like my personality never changes if I'm working or I'm not working, which for better or for worse. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it gets me in a little bit of trouble.
Mm.
But yeah, I just
Fuck yeah.
just like want to be iconic at all times.
Hell yes. I love this energy. Have you always been in this like energy space? So it seems, yeah, strong in who you are and proud of who you are.
Yeah, like I mean, I was born missing my left hand, like right
Mm-hmm.
below the elbow. And I think that when you are born different, you have two options. And it's to, kind of try to make yourself as small as possible and blend in and shrink
Mm,
away. Or you can take that and be like, fuck it, I'm different. People are going to look at me anyway. So I'm going to rock this shit.
yeah.
And I think that's kind of the opportunity that I leaned on, that I took. And so sometimes it takes people a little bit longer to get to that point or whatever. I guess I was just born missing a chip. I'm just like, I'm just like ready to put on all the accessories. I got all the attention at all times. So,
Mm,
even when I was like little, I wasn't like, I don't think I processed that it could be a setback or a detriment or even
mm.
something painful. Like I was just like, okay, cool.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't anything different for you.
Yeah, and I know that Corey Ray, who you had on the show, she's
Yeah.
so amazing, and she had nominated me for this show, and we became fast friends. We met in like 2011
Okay.
in college, and I think we both kind of saw that in one another, that just like unapologetic
Mm,
energy, for better or for worse. We both knew that we were different to some degree, even though Corey wasn't necessarily out, but we both just had that kind of confidence to move about the world, and we were instantly
mm,
like drawn to one another.
mm.
And it's just been like amazing, like the way if you carry yourself with confidence, like what you can attract. So it's like I find it like really like rewarding to be like proud of who I am. So
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Can you say more? You said what you attract. What do you mean by that? I'd love to hear more.
I think like the more myself that I am, regardless if I'm talking about like if I want to wear like 6-inch platforms, even though I just broke my fucking ankle. So maybe I'll learn my lesson,
Poor
but
thing.
probably not. Or I want to, like speak my mind or
Mm,
perform or whatever. I think the more I'm leaning into myself, which is, inevitably connected to being a dyke and having a disability, I think
mm,
that those opportunities open up for me. Like when I was trying to be more like politically correct or whatever and write on the internet, like, well, my queer identity intersects with my arm. Like those opportunities were coming to me, but they weren't the opportunities that I wanted. And
mm.
the second I started just being myself and opening up,
Yeah.
I got a really amazing job at Go Magazine.
Oh, yeah.
I started this podcast called Girls Interrupted with my best friend Zara. I have done all this amazing video work. And I think that like it sounds really like corny and woo woo and very much the opposite of how I normally talk. But I think the universe, like yeah, you open it up and the universe provides. And I think the way you open it up is you just step into yourself, whoever that
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I
is.
want to hear more. Like, what do you think that is? Do you feel like it's like a rhythm? Like, what is that?
I think it's a rhythm. I think it's a very like
Yeah.
symbiotic relationship with, I guess, like maybe even like a higher power if we're gonna go there,
Anywhere,
for
you know?
sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's also just like a vibe and also a gift that you give to other people, because
Mm,
when I think about, and I think a lot of people have a person in their lives like this, whether, you were a young queer person and you saw someone like super out, or you were like a young disabled person and you saw someone like rocking their disability or whatever it is. Like, I think when you present that, like you are really like changing people's lives and whatever. So I think that like
mm,
that just opens up so much. Like I know that the first time I saw someone wearing a bionic arm, her name
mm,
is Angel Jufria. She's an actor. She's really amazing. And I had never seen, I had written a piece for Jezebel called Getting Slutty at Amp Camp.
mm-hmm.
And it was like a piece about when I used to go to this camp for kids with limb differences and how everyone expected us to be like wholesome and cute and talking about disabilities, but we were just like, do you suck dick? Like we were just like little kids, like not little kids, but we were like teens, like wanting to talk about sex and shit. So
Right.
she had messaged
Obviously.
me. Yeah. What else do you do at
I
camp?
know. Right. Hormones. Woo.
So Angel had messaged me and was like, I actually went to that camp and I'd love to like meet up. Let's have a drink. And when I saw her, like she was gorgeous and like so confident and had this amazing, like slick, like white, like stormtrooper prosthetic. And I've never seen a
Yeah.
prosthetic like that before. I've only seen ones
Mm.
that like are supposed to look human, like skin toned or whatever. And I was just like, I saw that like she was like radiating like the vibes were immaculate from her. So I was like, okay, like you're giving me permission to be like, I want that too.
Yeah.
So I
What
hope
a
that I can be that for other people. And I think like to pay it forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's like a palpable difference in the presence of the person, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we kind of put this like blanket like, oh, it's woo woo or all these different sorts of things. And I'm struggling to constantly find the language to describe these states of being. So I'd love to hear like what do you think that is? Like I use words like authenticity, but I don't know,
Yeah.
like, yeah, what words like really resonate for you when you think about this state?
Yeah. Definitely authenticity,
Yeah.
iconicity, that bitchicity. Even if you're not 100, like I think confident is can be like a very reductive word, sort of,
Right.
but I do think
Sure.
it's definitely confidence. Sometimes I surprise myself by saying like very like endearing, loving things, but I think it's also like a love for other people
Mm,
to to
yeah.
to to put that out into the world because I think if
Absolutely.
you love yourself and I think that it's a very reciprocal thing and to have love for other people and I think that that's always when I can pinpoint it when I am affected by that sort of palpable energy that you're
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
I often interpret it as like a love for other people which again sounds super corny but like that's probably the best way I would encapsulate it.
No, I'm open to it, right? Because like
Yeah.
when you love yourself, you have more space to hold for other people around you, I feel
Yeah.
like.
Yeah,
Right?
I agree, absolutely.
Yeah. So when
Yeah.
you're like nervous about yourself and like someone does something weird, then it brings up and you like, ooh, I don't like that. And then what does it say
Yeah.
about me? And it's an interesting dynamic that happens in relationships that I think you're referring to.
Yeah.
It's fascinating
Yeah.
to me. What other relationships were in your life at that time? How is your community and the other like significant relationships when you were first coming into the space of, like proud ownership of yourself?
Yeah, well, it's interesting when you say like community because I
Mhm.
didn't ever think I need like just in terms of my disability, like I never thought that I needed like a community. When
Mm.
I was younger, I was just like such a little cocky motherfucker and my mom is like very Italian and she was like, I found a summer camp for you to go to. It's gonna be very good. You're gonna go. And I was like, I don't want to fucking go to that.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Well, it's the kids like you can see other kids with one arm." And I'm thinking like, I don't need that at all. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't on my radar. I was
Mm.
almost like offended that she thought I needed to be with people that were like me. So I was like, I'm not going. And the way she got me to go was to appeal to my ridiculous ego. And she was like, well, you can help someone and show them how confident you are. So why don't you go? And I was like, all right, I'll go.
Yeah.
And when I went, there was nothing more, like, magical. I don't know why you're pulling all, like, weird emotional stuff out of me, but, like, I would cry when I thought about this camp and, like, just I had never fucking seen another person that looked like me before.
Wow.
I had never spoken to someone who also, puts their necklace on with, like, using their teeth or,
Yeah.
puts their hair up in, like, a special way, and, like, having that community was something I didn't know that I needed or wanted or any of that, and it wasn't the way that I would imagine at all, and that's what made it so
Mm.
powerful for me because I
Wow.
I think I thought that the concept of community, whether you're talking about the gay community, whatever makes you marginalized. So in this instance, disabled, I thought it would be like we're all maybe in victimhood or in aligning ourselves just because of one thing and I it's so much more than that and
Mm.
that's what I definitely learned and we ended up like being like yeah we do have a shared experience and I thought that was like offensive and I'm like just because we have one arm doesn't mean we're going to get along but it's like we do have a shared
Mm.
experience
Mhm.
and what opened it up is that we were all just basically like it was kind of like Mean Girls, except we were missing some arms and legs because it was, like there was like the cool girls at camp, there was like the loser girls at camp, and it's like these kind of like social structures just like played out again for better or for worse.
Mhm.
But it was like, oh wow, like we're not gonna this community is just as nuanced and fucked up and hierarchical and as any other clique of girls, and
Mhm.
this one's mine. And
Mm.
like that just felt really, really good.
Yeah, but this one's mine. That
Yeah.
really resonated for me. Mm.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, how did that make you feel? This was mine.
Just real like very surprised because like I had said like I
Yeah.
didn't want to go, but
Right.
also just like but I'm still friends with all of those girls,
Mm,
and
mhm.
it's not like we see each other or anything. It's more like of a Facebook type situation. But I know that I could reach out to any of them at any time for something, and same thing with them for me. And it's
Absolutely.
just like that's something that you'll take with you for the rest of your life. That is so special, and that's such a specific fucking experience. And I teach creative writing, and I always tell my students like, the personal is universal. And to me, that was a
Mm.
really personal specific experience. Like
Yeah.
most people don't know what it's like to go to a camp for people that are missing their limbs, but everybody knows what it's like to find community and so it's like
Absolutely.
that's what, it's like a very, very universal kind of story, even though it's like very random and specific.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree, right? There's so many different ways that we live the human experience, but at the core, the emotions of love, connection, all those sorts of things are, universal in that. So I
Yeah.
agree exactly what you're talking to. Yeah, I can imagine having that space to be able to be seen by other people that understand you in a specific and minority way. That's super
Yeah.
profound.
Yes, yes. Like when I think the last time I went there, I was like a counselor in training and I was like 16. And like
Mhm.
we were more like, I guess, sexually active at that age than when we were first like gossiping at 13. Like, have you given a blowjob? And
Sure,
like,
sure, sure. Yes.
it was things that I thought that I would never even want to ask. But like, we kind of were like, do you ever feel like less pretty or whatever? And it's like, I
Mm,
would never feel comfortable having those conversations. Now I am because I'm like a fully grown ass adult. But at that time, wouldn't want to ever think that because I wouldn't want anyone to feel bad for me or be
mm,
like, no, you're beautiful on the inside. Like that was like a
yeah.
totally safe space because I'm like, all these other bitches have the same exact thing as me. So I know this probably crosses their minds, but they have the same experience. So they're
Mhm.
not going to give me some cookie cutter bullshit answer. They're either going to say yes or no, but it's going to be truthful.
Exactly.
So yeah,
Exactly, and that's a different level of connection.
yeah,
And it just in different ways that we have understandings of people. I don't know what words to use for that, but it's profound, almost like this level of intimacy to be able to be
definitely.
seen in the processing of how they see the world and knowing that you share a similar paradigm and experience, and the intimacy in that connection is really
Yeah.
profound.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like a really beautiful thing,
Ab
like the last day at camp, we'd be like sobbing our fucking brains out because we all
mm.
loved each other so much.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it felt like maybe there was just like a strong level of intimacy that was
Definitely.
present.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I love how you mentioned that now you're able to feel that intimacy more in other spaces, right? With
Absolutely.
maybe people that don't share the same identities or the same experiences. I think that's a profound shift that
Mhm.
kind of like what we talked about earlier takes a loving and confidence in yourself to be able to show up
Yeah.
into the world with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you say that because I think it's really important to have that intimacy and connection with people that aren't like you. And,
Mhm.
when I was young, of course, I needed that. It was a really like life affirming experience. But I think the older you get, like you need to find, it's hard to hate people up close. So
Mhm.
to sort of find that intimacy and trust, and that takes a lot of like confidence and growth in oneself. So I don't think it's
Mhm.
easy to just go up and like fucking bond with people like that.
Yeah.
But when you can get to that point, I think it's like you said, it's like it's rather profound to, and it goes back to like the personal and the universal. Like
Mhm.
some I'm trying, like I don't know, I make friends everywhere I go. Like the fucking frat guy sitting at the bar next to me probably has something in common with me, but I often make friends with all these random ass people
Mm.
because like it's like a the same like vibration of just like openness.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a profound thing that you can be changed in conversation and dynamic with the dynamic created in yeah, any sort of situation, even our conversations here, right? And we go forward and we take these things and we change and integrate from bouncing off and having these little like chemistry,
Yeah.
experiments with other people. I think that is profound.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And that's why I think studying relationships is such like a key way to also understanding our relationship with ourself, right? Is like
Definitely.
sometimes we get into the space where we talk like, oh, it's just a relationship with yourself, self-love, all of this. But it also is so much so the system and the dynamic of the community around us. And I think you've been pointing to that, the friend that had the white arm that was
Yeah.
very I forget what the words you were to use it, but it showed a sense of embracing who they are, which I feel like is the boldness and authenticity of loving yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so then that shifts. You see that, you start to bring that, and then you start to share that energy with other people, and it changes, I'm sure, the dynamic. Do you feel like there was like changes in your friend groups during this time and your period of life?
I always had really close friends. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
when I got back from camp, like, I think I just
Mhm.
felt like a little bit cooler because, like, I was like part of like the cool girl group in camp that were like
Sure. I love
Hollister.
this. Yes.
Um, so yeah, and I think that maybe I had more of like an awareness about the fact that I am disabled and I don't have to be
Mm,
like, no, I'm not. I'm just like everyone else, you know? So it's like
yeah.
probably more of like an acknowledgement in myself, but it's in terms of my friendships, I've always had just like totally strong, probably borderline codependent friendships. I'm just like a really loving person. So I think
Mm,
if anything, like might just got strengthened and bolstered after I had that experience because like I
sure.
was more confident and happy in myself.
Absolutely, absolutely. So then if like we look back on the time when you didn't want the community and you were saying that you didn't need it, what do you think was
Yeah.
like getting in the way at that time of, because did you have a close like friend group at that time too?
I had an amazingly close friend group. I
Yeah.
just had never met like a disabled person before.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's like really similar to like when you're when like a young woman is in college and takes like a gender studies course or something and it's like I'm not a feminist but I do believe in women's rights. It's like
Mm,
I was like I am not disabled and I don't need these people but like it's fine like but I you know what I mean but I am like I
yeah.
that's maybe not the perfect analogy but it was like I just felt like I don't need this. I think I'm
Mm,
better than needing this and I think I don't know why I felt like I just need to show how
yeah.
and capable I am. I'm so capable. I'm gonna climb the fucking rock wall. I'm gonna do the dance class. I'm gonna do all the shit. I don't need help with
Sure.
anything. And I just felt like maybe felt like I was being vulnerable or admitting that. And I think that's
Sure.
like that kind of does coincide with like that feminism sort of analogy because it's like that's like oh no I think I'm better than that. I'm not gonna I can fight against if some guy grabs my ass. I'm better than I don't need that. I'm better than that. And it's like no one's fucking better than that
Mhm.
and once you like think about that and acquiesce it to the concept of no one is fucking better than that, you can
Yeah.
open yourself up to some like much more profound experiences.
Absolutely, and once you're opening to, like, the level of humanness,
Yeah.
that there is no, like, higher level. Yeah, it sounds like maybe it was, like, this fear that, like, if I need other people, I'm somehow weaker.
Yeah.
Is that probably
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and in that I feel like that can be so scary then to, like, to recognize, like, there's, a concept. I'm in an intro to feminist class right now, and so I've been, for feminist therapy, and I've been reading, and some of the texts are talking about how there's this duality to human nature where we have to recognize our independence and also our interconnectedness on other people. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot, like that duality of the different states of like, yeah, knowing and loving yourself and also recognizing that we need other people in our lives and that we couldn't
Absolutely.
actually
Yeah.
function without those people and the
Yeah.
social connection. And that like complex duality of that has been something I've been trying to like sit and grapple with.
Yeah. Yeah. Like my mother always says, it takes a village.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you need that people to bounce off and to have that sort of, yeah, community space to be seen in our fullness and to be able to have other people that understand us. I don't know how we get through the world without that, or it feels rather isolating for me when I feel like I'm
Yeah.
lacking that community to be seen in those ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Me
Yeah.
too. I love other people. I'm a
Yeah.
huge extrovert.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Yeah, and that probably comes out in a lot of the different ways that you're an activist for all the different things that you're doing. I imagine like your dynamics with people and to be able to create space and create all the different, yeah, modes of community, right? And
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah.
Can you say more about how you got into that work from, it sounds like you found people in the community. How did you start getting into producing and making your own things?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've always been a writer.
Mm-hmm.
I've always just like loved poetry, been obsessed with it.
Yeah.
I have my master's degree in poetry, which is a useless degree, but that's okay. Um,
It's a great degree. It taught you a lot, I'm sure.
so I've always just been in love with writing,
Yeah.
always in love with writing. And kind of to break into that space, to have a career in writing, I think my first essay was published in probably like 2015 or 2016. And
Mm-hmm.
that was right after the sort of fall of the personal essay and the sort of confesse structure. So
Oh,
it was like
sure.
after like XO Jane like went down. So kind of these more like essays with like a point or like a nut graph or like politically correct or talking about like intersecting identity
Mm-hmm.
essays were like doing really well on the internet. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, I could do that. I have plenty of those. Even though it's not 100% my wheelhouse, I'd rather write like weird poetry or like write, a story about my vagina. But I was like, I can do this. Fuck it. Like, I'm not precious about my writing. Like, I just, I want to be published. And the more I kind of felt like I was playing the game to get published,
Mm.
I felt like I was actually making real change, and it happens like inauthentically because I was like, I'll fucking say anything to get published. I don't fucking care. And then I was like, wait, even though I'm writing these things and maybe the title is not 100% how I feel, but this is still my voice and it's still my story,
Absolutely.
and I'm delivering this information and I'm getting all these messages from people all around the world. Like, and it just spirals from there. And, I got more and more bylines. I'm very
Mm.
lucky to have written for some really, really amazing publications. And I didn't never would think of myself as an activist, but I think that after, you write enough pieces and people have told you you changed their life enough times, I guess you kind of are.
Absolutely. Yes. 100%. Yes.
Yeah, so it started out like in a sort of not inauthentic, but in a way to be like, I just want to be published. And then I was like, wait, I have
Mm.
fucking something to say
Yes,
about
you
this.
do.
Thank you. And like going back to what we were talking about, like at the beginning of our conversation
Mhm.
about just like being your full self and like what opportunities that opens up. Like me being my full self is me being crass and loud and ridiculous. But all of that intertwines with having a disability and being gay. And I know that I give other people permission. So when I'm on a podcast and I like think people expect me to be like, oh, I was a Wonder Woman, everybody's special, and I'm like, woohoo, and whatever. So
Absolutely.
I think like that's a huge part of activism too, is
Heck
just like
yeah.
being yourself in all your fucking messy, crazy glory. And that's a
Mhm.
huge part of it for me. That's like what I'm passionate about, especially like with Girls Interrupted, the podcast that I have with Zara. Like
Mhm.
we just say we're not a wellness podcast, we're a fucking mental illness podcast.
I
And
love
we just fucking go for it. We say whatever, we just
Yeah.
are fully uncensored. And the more like I was scared, like, oh, how if I become uncensored, am I not going to be a good influence on like a younger girl who's missing an
Yeah.
arm or whatever? But it's like, no, the more uncensored and wacko I am, I know the more people's lives I affect for the better.
Yeah, I mean, wacko is like such a hard word. I mean, I would say that's raw and vulnerable,
Yes, of course.
right?
Yeah.
Like you're showing up
Yeah.
fully to be like, this is who I am and this is my humanness. And with
Yeah.
that fucking ownership and pleasure over that, yeah, why
Absolutely.
not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but in our society, which is trying to bring us down, that is a radical act.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like to just be
Yeah.
your full self is radical in this society, I think.
Yeah. I mean, exactly like what your podcast is like, the status quo objector is like, even to object to the status quo is to unapologetically be yourself. And it seems like a simple thing, but that's, it is radical.
Well, absolutely. When we have so many different, pressures, patriarch, whatever we want to call that pressure
Right.
that's telling us to be a certain way and to radically alter that and then take ownership in our alteration. Yeah, that takes some serious grounding and loving in yourself and pride. I would love if you could tell me, like I know it's probably hard to pick a piece that you've written that's really like feel like you've gotten a lot of like receptiveness or something that was meaningful to you that you wrote about. I'd love to like hear a little bit more
Sure.
about,
I
yeah,
think that I
anything.
got a really big response to that Getting Slutty at Amp Camp piece. It was my first piece, and it was for Jezebel, and Jezebel definitely like knows the algorithm, so I got a lot of likes and comments. But I
Sure,
think
sure.
that was definitely a good precipice for me to be talking about these things because it was such a specific issue with disability and sexuality, which are
Mhm.
like my passions.
Yeah.
And I think that affected so many other young people's lives. Like my DMs were like blown up after that. So that's definitely for
Mm.
like, that comes to mind for how I've definitely affected other people's lives. But for me personally, like pieces, like a piece that means something to me, I wrote this piece called Blacking Out in the Blue Dark for Go Magazine. And it's just like a weird stream of consciousness story about my best friend Zara and I in Palm Springs. And we just get like drunk as fuck. And it's just like these weird kind of non-chronological like poetic flashes. And you know
Sure.
what, the essay didn't really do that well, but it just like means so much to me because like
Mm.
it's I just remember that night. So just feeling like like it's that rare night where everything is just like fucking perfect, like you can
Oof.
smell the air. It was
Oof.
literally the blue dark, like it was pitch black but the sky was still blue. And like,
Yes.
it just felt like a Lana Del Rey video. And it was
Oh,
so much fun to write. And also not to worry about being like, do I have to make a point? Do I have to worry about clicks? Like I was like, I'm just gonna paint this picture. And if people like it, they like it. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely right. I mean, I think that is what art is, to express a feeling, emotion, and to let that go. And some people might not get it, and that's totally
Yeah.
fine. But it's
Yeah.
powerful to have that release, I feel
Yeah.
like. Ah,
Yeah.
yeah. So do you feel like you're, in comparison then maybe to like the beginning of your writing to where you're at now, do you feel like there's been a big shift in your style?
Definitely.
Yeah, tell me
I mean, I think
more.
I've always been like very irreverent and funny,
Yeah.
but I think I've been giving myself permission a lot more to
Mm,
just say,
I love that.
just go
Fuck
crazy.
yeah.
Even just like with structure and not having to connect things, and because I love poetry because there are no rules. But I was like, well, what if I took that and I applied it to nonfiction, and I just didn't have any rules for that either?
Mhm.
Who said there has to be rules?
No one.
So I've definitely been applying that to my writing, and
Mhm.
also being less scared to be really poetic and colorful with
Mhm.
that irreverence.
Mm.
And it's been really fun to just, I think I've established my chops like enough as a writer with bylines. And I had to write an article every day for like years when I first started to go. Like I've written so
Sure.
much that now it just feels like I can, that muscle is something that's been flexed enough that I can just
Sure.
play and play and play and play and play. The more I play, the fucking weirder I get, more experimental I get. Yeah, I'm just in a really weird place with writing right now, but I like it. It
Hell
always makes me
yeah.
want to question my book proposal. I'm like, this just seems too normal. Like I want to be so weird.
Yeah. No, I love it though, because it seems like it's tuning into you, into
Mhm.
whatever your energy and whatever is coming up for you, rather than worrying about how it's going to be received from other people.
Yeah, yeah. I'm feeling kind of freaky with the writing lately. I
Fuck
mean, I
yeah.
want people to like it, of course, but I feel very like in flow.
Mm. What is that flow state like? That's something I've also looked into on like the psychology of and the research of what it feels like to be in a flow state.
Ah, oh, it's so
I
indescribable.
know. That's why I'm asking you because I struggle.
I think
Yeah.
that okay, so the last feeling I could
Yeah.
probably capture that I
Mhm.
felt super in flow is
Mhm.
I was listening to Your Best American Girl by Mitski just like on repeat over and over and over again. And I was writing, the fuck was I writing? I was rewriting a chapter for my book proposal. And it's like, this is also kind of embarrassing, but I know I'm in flow and I am typing, but my whole body kind of moves.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, you're like
And
in it.
yeah, and I feel it with like the song, and I know the song's on repeat, so it's kind of safe because I'm in that same rhythm and flow. And it's like so weird. It's like an incantation. Like I know that I'm in a flow when I feel like my whole body is writing the piece.
Wow.
And it happens rarely because I always have to write. It doesn't always feel magical and flowy, but when it
Mhm.
does, it's just like the coolest fucking feeling. Like
Mm.
I almost feel like a snake or something. And it's always when I have a
Absolutely.
song on repeat. Like I pick
Okay.
one song to like obsess over, and then it just becomes my whole like movement. Like
Wow. Wow. So you like set aside time then to like pick one song? Is this
yeah,
like a
usually I just like, it's just a
yeah.
song that I like right now. I'm obsessed with "Meet Me at Our Spot,"
Yeah.
that Willow song. So usually I know what song I'm obsessed with because like I just have a obsessive personality and I'm always fucking latching onto something. But yeah.
Yes. That's so funny. I listen to a song like once, twice, and then I'm like, okay, you need to change it because you're gonna wear it out. So I love that you lean full into that. You're like, no,
I
I'm gonna
totally do.
take full ownership. I'm gonna feel this song in my body. That's amazing. So then, like, yeah, as a fellow artist, I'm just trying to like learn from your creative process. So do you like pick a song specifically and like sit and set aside time to get into the flow, like the writing state?
Yeah.
Or do you let
It
it come to you? Like, yeah.
it depends on the because like I said, I'm always having to write.
Yeah.
So not so much anymore because I have a higher editorial position, but I am always having to do some sort of writing. So it doesn't always feel magical, and I don't always have to set aside time or whatever. But
Sure.
when I'm doing something for either my book or my own personal enjoyment, like that, like you said, I do set aside time exactly like that, where I make the conscious decision to be like, I'm gonna pick a song, I'm gonna play it over and over again, I'm
Mm,
gonna light candles, and I'm just
absolutely.
gonna let it flow, flow, flow. And sometimes the flow sucks for like the first 40 minutes, and I'll be just fucking banging on the keyboard and writing. I don't know what the
Yeah.
fuck I'm writing. I'd rather be masturbating, like da da da. But
That's the
I just
real
don't
truth.
I just don't let myself stop. And I always tell
Yeah.
my students that, when you're starting a free write, even if you're just fucking banging on your keyboard or you're writing, I hate this, I can't write, just don't stop.
Mm,
Cause that's the opposite of flow is stopping. So I just like,
yes.
that's what, like when I decide that I'm like, okay, this is going to be me setting aside time, I will force myself to just keep going, going, going,
I
going.
like this. I like this. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost like starting the creative juices. And maybe at the
Yeah.
first part, they're like not really that strong. It might be, not the
Yeah. They're
best
like, bitch,
stuff.
no.
Yeah, exactly. But once you start to let that go, then you start to tap into a deeper state. Yeah, of connecting with your creativity. It kind of reminds me of The Morning Pages by Julia Cameron.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I know she
Yeah.
had wrote a lot about like, yeah, just writing, even if you want to write, like, I don't want
It's
to
like a
be
brain
writing
dump.
this. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And maybe that being like a way to connect. I think part of also what you're pointing to is the intentionality of creating time and space to be like, I'm going to drop into this state and set like
Hmm.
that's a practice, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah, I'm always so curious like what different artists do to be able to like get into that flow state and to feel that rhythm and feel that presence. So I'm always just like collecting little data.
What do you do?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, for today, I like to make a tea. I've got a playlist that I love that's like very empowering and kind of talks about loving humanity. So I can feel like I'm very like opening my heart. And I light, there was an incense going over
Love
here
it.
and just spent some time a little bit in like meditation beforehand, trying to just be calm and present in my body. And then I also like to get really high and like dance late at night when I can
Sounds
use my
fucking
hue
awesome.
lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can use my hue lights to set like a scene. And so, yeah, I'll be like listening to music and smoking and then stretching and doing yoga flows because I also teach yoga. And then, like, occasionally writing a post it note as like, little sayings and poetry and things like that. So,
Sounds
like,
like
it's
so much
very,
fun. I want to do that right
yeah, yeah,
now.
yeah, I know, it's great. Because like I can never just sit to do one. I don't know. I like to
Yeah.
stretch and to move and to dance. Maybe you feel like similar where like it feels good to just be in your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's been my practice with school and stuff. It fluctuates in my like availability to do that since I have assignments and
Yeah.
things that are not as able to be flowy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's been the practice. But I think it's always just nice to talk to other artists that like are in their yeah, in their space and in that ownership. And it's a pleasure to get to talk to other people that can even have this level of conversation, I think, about our identities, the community, the intersectionality of all these different pieces here. I think it's
Yeah.
definitely a shared thing that's
Yeah. I
beautiful.
love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to hold space too. Do you feel like there's anything that came onto your heart, maybe that you wanted to talk about today that we didn't hit in just through the natural flow of things?
No, I think this was like super flowy and great.
Yeah, absolutely. I always try to leave a little bit of space just at the end to make sure that like people had, enough to like let go in case there was something they wanted to like impart with guests or anything like that that comes up on their heart.
Yeah, no, I think it was perfect.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, then one of the last questions I have for all the guests on my show is I always ask, what is one thing that you wish other people knew was more normal?
Oh, that's such a good question. Okay, right now for me, in my heart, like, I probably have, like, a bunch of answers, but, like, right now, like, how you just said,
Mhm.
like, what comes to your heart, what comes to my fucking heart is I
Mhm.
wish it was more normal for people to know that it's normal to be, like, unhappy in relationships and that it's okay to
Mm.
leave,
Mm.
and that it's normal to feel that way and you're, like, not, like, a failure, and I think that, like, especially in the space that you work in, I know that there's so many conversations about different types of relationships and what but if you're not as privy to that sort of conversation, it can be so hard and so
Mm.
shameful to, like, I mean, I'm getting divorced right now,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I have, like, a very, like, traditional Catholic family, and
Mm.
as soon as I was like, "I'm so fucking unhappy," there's, like, a bazillion people around me that are like, "Wait, I'm so fucking unhappy too." And I'm like,
Really?
"Okay, this is
Whoa.
normal. We're all just unhappy, but,
Whoa.
like, it doesn't mean we have to do this." So I wish it was more normalized to just, like, not suffer in your relationships for the sake of it and just,
Wow.
like, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like maybe that's something that, like, people aren't talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dang. I think that you're also pointing to something too that, like, when you open up about the realness of this, people just start coming out of the woodwork and be like, "Yeah, I have the same thing too," and you're just like, "Oh,
Yeah, and I'm like, "So
I'm
it
not
is normal.
alone."
Let's talk about it."
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and then being able to take the ability to challenge and leave what can seem like a unescapable situation at the time.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, that's really
absolutely.
tough. That's really tough to go through.
Yeah.
I hope one of the things in like opening up like that is finding again community, right? To feel not
Yeah.
alone in that. And it's bold to share your vulnerability and saying that, yeah, I'm going through a divorce. This is what I'm processing. But then in that, finding other people who equally open up to you and say, yeah, I'm going through the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, how
Yeah.
did that feel for you?
It feels like when you're about to go on stage or about to give a presentation or whatever you're doing that could be nerve-wracking, and the second you say, "I'm nervous," all of a sudden you're not as nervous. Like, so sometimes when I'm about to go on stage, I'm like, "Sorry, guys, I'm a little nervous," and then all of a sudden I'm like, "What the fuck? I'm not nervous." So
Mm,
it's like as soon as I am saying these things to people that I would be so scared and ashamed to say, it just lifts and it
yeah,
fucking goes away. And I don't feel
absolutely.
that shame or guilt or anything. I speak it and it goes away.
Mhm. Mm. Yeah, it's almost like letting it go in that
Yeah.
way to the other people instead of trying to hide and be like, "I can't show people this thing." It's like,
Yeah.
"No, this is the realness and I'm gonna let it go," and it's
Yeah.
yeah, having
Like
that space.
yeah. Like you use the word inescapable, and that's such a great word. And that's how I felt
Mm.
for a really long time.
Mm.
Not a really long time. I mean, I'm lucky that I was able to realize that this was not a good relationship sooner than most people, but I
Sure.
felt that it was very, very inescapable. And
Mm.
you realize when you start verbalizing things that if you're lucky, nothing is really inescapable. So, yeah, and I think it's been really powerful for me to learn that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can you say more? Nothing is really inescapable.
I think that, like, we might think that this is the most terrifying thing to do to leave this person or quit this job or move or whatever the fuck. But, like, you can do anything. And it might be temporarily discomfortable, uncomfortable, and weird and inconvenient. Maybe you'll be broke and sad for a while, but nothing. Like, the only thing that will make you feel more fucking stifled is staying in the thing. So take the chance and nothing, like, really, and no one's ever really alone. Really, speak the thing, and a million other people will be like, "Oh fuck yeah, I feel like I couldn't escape my relationship either."
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. To be able to do this fucking scary thing, right? It's
Yeah,
scary as hell.
it is. It is, but it's
Yeah.
worth it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then to find the freedom, the full embodiment, I'm sure has been such a shift for you to come into this
Yeah,
space and to feel that freedom, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah. It was such a pleasure to have you on the podcast and to share
Oh,
this
thank you so
space
much for
with
having
you.
me. It was really good to meet you.
Yeah, yeah, it was lovely to meet you and to hear your story. And you're very inspiring with the way that you proudly proclaim everything about
Thank
you. I can
you.
feel it and in your smile and your energy. It's beautiful. Yeah, of
Thank you, Nicole.
course. Is there anywhere you want to plug for your writing, your podcast for
Yeah,
people that connect
sure.
with you and want to hear more of your work?
You can find me on Instagram at Dayna Troisi. And our podcast is at Girls Interrupted Media, and that's girls with a Z. Girls Interrupted Media on Instagram, and then we're just Girls Interrupted with the Z on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you want to listen. And then you could just Google me to find my writing.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed today's episode, then leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you're a part of the anarchist community, then follow us on Instagram or nominate a guest for the show by sending in a letter to modernanarchypodcast@gmail.com. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.